The G4, Brazil, Germany, India, and Japan argue the UN Security Council frozen in 1945 and that adding them as permanent members would modernize it. Pakistan's Uniting for Consensus group argues the opposite, that adding more permanent seats simply creates new centers of permanent privilege and makes the council harder to reform later. Walk us through why Pakistan believes expanding elected, re-electable seats is the more democratic fix rather than printing or minting new permanent members.
Basically, you have mentioned G4, India, Brazil, Germany, and Japan, and of course the coffee group, the United for Consensus. But there are two other major stakeholders in this. One is the African group, which is large in number, and the other is the most important segment of all this reform process, which is the P5. I remember when it started the whole process in 1997, when then Secretary General Kofi Annan presented a document talking about the reforms. It was not the first time, but formally, the program was launched by the Secretary General United Nations, uh, urging the entire world to see if there is any possibility of any reform. But we have seen that soon after this event from 1997, we saw the Eritrea Ethiopia war, we saw Kosovo, we saw Afghanistan, Iraq, Ukraine, Gaza, and now the ongoing war in Iran, Iran, US, and Israel. And the whole Middle East is facing that. So, my first general comment will be that regardless of this reform process, ever since its inception, this idea of having United Nations reform, particularly in the Security Council, the world has seen full-fledged wars, and we have seen mostly the United Nations Security Council, some other consideration. The basic objective of United Nations Security Council, which is to keep peace and security in the world, it has miserably failed. Begin with, I would like to talk about Pakistan's principled stand, which is based on the democratic norms of the world or democracy as such, which says that it should be the power or the authority should be distributed among nations on the basis of equality. That is why instead of going for increase in permanent numbers of the P5 or the veto power, Pakistan would like to increase the number of non-permanent members. And I think I remember reading that paper which said that we can go into up to 15 and even 20 non-permanent members, rotation, etc., and all those things which are going on, with the selection of non-permanent members. On the other hand, Pakistan also, feels that instead of the Security Council, it should be the General Assembly which should be empowered more, because that is a broader platform where all the countries, 192, 193, and I think we have quite a lot of support on this, as the coffee group, which you have just mentioned, the consensus group that includes important countries like Italy and other countries. They have a group which is going on for decades now, and they are not ready to accept any increase in number of the permanent United Nations Security Council members. This is number one. And number two, they are all for increase in the number of non-permanent members to give it a broader and a wider perspective, and focusing on the democratic norms and the empowerment of the General Assembly as such. And I think it makes sense.
Right, and permanent membership is meant to require broad international confidence and a demonstrated commitment to the upholding UN resolutions, India still has unimplemented Security Council resolutions on Jammu and Kashmir on the Council's own historical agenda and has more recently been named by Canada and others in connection with transnational repression abroad. In your assessment as a former diplomat, how should the membership weigh a candidate's own record of complying or non compliance with the Council's resolutions when deciding who earns a permanent seat?
Three parts of your question. The first part is that it wasn't actually the United Nations Security Council resolutions, the UNCIP resolutions mainly, and why they have not been implemented, because they were passed unanimously, because there are types and categories of resolutions in which the Security Council actually implements certain resolutions, and there are certain resolutions which the Security Council of the United Nations as a whole is not actually obliged to force any implementation. And unluckily, these resolutions that we call the relevant resolutions of the United Nations Security Council, they are there, but they are they're just there on that website and in the archives of the United Nations. And secondly, if the situation arises in which India is actually to be included in that P5 elite group, I don't think that India's ventures in Canada, that's blatantly killing a Sikh member of the Khalistan movement in Canada, which the Canadian Prime Minister said that this is not he didn't belong to Khalistan, he was a Canadian national. And then, of course, the other guy in the United States, which was actually a big issue. And before that, the EU Disinfo Lab and all that. I don't think that when it comes to crunch, that the world powers will look at these things. I mean, imagine that this Five Eyes report, and look at the reaction of the United States, or for that matter, the Five Eyes, those countries, Australia, etc. What have they done for that? What has the European Union or Europe has done for the Disinfo Lab, EU Disinfo Lab? Proven facts. So I don't think it will be a consideration if a decision in principle has been taken to include India in that elite group where they have the veto power, that these considerations will come up. I don't think so. But at the same time, I don't think that India stands any chance, for that matter, to be in that group, because not only Pakistan and the UFC or the coffee group, because there are other factors also. There's this huge African group. So if India is included, you have to include two countries at least from Africa, most probably South Africa and Nigeria, if I'm not wrong. So it is going to be a huge, a colossal exercise. So I personally, not that I'm from Pakistan, and I don't want to see India anywhere near the P5, but looking at it objectively, India does not stand a chance. And one factor which goes against its permanent membership, for that matter, is not the the killing and the sponsorship of terrorism outside its boundaries. It is the region that India belongs. It's the SAARC region. And if you see the SAARC region, if a country cannot be accepted by its neighbors, how can it be accepted by the world at large? For instance, see its relations with Sri Lanka, with Bangladesh, with Pakistan, with Afghanistan. Besides this, all this terrorism and sponsorship and all that. So the world is watching India. The problem is that India, being an important country and a big market, of course, it has a political and economic cloud. But that doesn't mean that India should be included in that. And the United States of America, the UK, and France, and particularly China. I don't think China, remember that 1962 war and then this Gwalior Valley and the problems, the border issues, uh, even the Kashmir issue. So I have no, qualms about it that India is not going to be there. It's not my wishful thinking. It is a fact that at that particular juncture, when it comes to including India as the permanent member of the United Nations Security Council with veto power, I don't think so.
Thank you so much, Najm Us Saqib, for your time. This has been amazing. Thank you.